Welcome back, folks, to the Mailwright Show. This is episode 187. We really got a great guest this time on the show, folks. I know I say that almost every time when we have a guest, but I've been really looking forward to this interview. We've got Christy Murdock Edgar, and she writes for Inman, and there's not much she doesn't know about content writing. Christy, would you like to quickly introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers?
Sure. Hi, I'm Christy Murdock Edgar, and I own Writing Real Estate, WRITING, Writing Real Estate, and I write for brokers and real estate companies all over North America, and as you said, I also write for Inman. I have a couple of columns there, and then I do a lot of feature pieces for them as well.
That's great. And I've got my great co-host, Robert Newman. Would you like to introduce yourself to the new listeners and viewers, Robert?
Sure. The five of them. I'll introduce myself. No, I'm just kidding. My name is Robert Newman. I'm the founder of Inbound REM. I am a real estate technologist of well over a decade. And if you want to learn about some of the lead generating platforms and how to use them or who to use and why to use them, you should check out my website. And you should also check out John's website. He's been working on an automation tool for a long time that is starting to really be a thing that you should look at.
Yep. Thank you for that, Robert. So, Christy, I know quite a few agents, and they all know on their website they should be writing some decent content, blogs, and they start off with all enthusiastic, and then it dies quickly, or people say, I have no idea what to write. Mm-hmm. In no shape or form. So maybe we could start this conversation off with some ideas or some insight on what kind of content and the mechanics and how much time they should place on writing content for their blog, their website. How does that sound, Christy?
That sounds great. Absolutely. I actually dropped a blog post about this yesterday because I had talked to a client who said, well, it doesn't really matter what's on the blog, right? I can just put anything as long as Google reads it as something new. And I ended up not bidding for the job because it was like, we were so not on the same page. I think it really matters what you're writing. And what I always tell people is you want a combination of really up to the minute, interesting, current content. And then I think maybe like a third of evergreen content. So there are definitely those questions that everybody gets all the time about the finance process or about the local market. And there's a place for that. But I don't think that you want a blog that is all that, because you're going to end up with something that people can find in lots of places. You're going to end up saying some of the same things other people are saying. So my thing is always get people in there with something exciting, but then let them see some of the other evergreen content so that they know that's a resource they can come to for everything. So I think that's one of the things I would say to people is have a mix. Some people want that very safe, kind of tried and true content, and you just can't build your whole blog out of that because it's just not going to, draw in people. And that's part of the thing. You've got to get them there in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Sorry, go on, Robert.
Nope.
No, right. I totally agree with you. So what would be some more exciting things to write about than the normal things you would come in your mind connected to a real estate agent's website?
I think it's all about authenticity, and it's all about who you are as a person, not just as a real estate agent. So, one of the things that people are really afraid of is narrowing their audience too much, right? I'm gonna write about, this little neighborhood, and then nobody's gonna want to read it, or I'm gonna miss out on a client who's interested in something else. But the reality is, if you're writing for everybody, you're really writing for nobody. You've got to be writing for somebody specific. And I think narrowing down a little bit, getting into a niche that you're writing for, getting into a really specific area that you're writing for, or even, if you know everything about shopping in your town. Like you're a big shopper, you know all the shops. That's a great thing to write about. If you know about, because you've got kids and you know everything about the schools and the little festivals and activities that go on, write about that. I have a really, really good friend and client in Alexandria, Virginia, and she writes about, life with a toddler in this very specific part of Alexandria, Virginia, because that's what she knows. And it's awesome. And her content is really useful. And there are a lot of young moms out there who are going to get a whole lot out of that and really, really connect to her in a deep way. And I think that's what it's all about.
That's great.
Lovely. So guys, I'm going to jump in here and edify or clarify on something that Christy opened up with, guys. There's two types of content she's mentioning. She said evergreen, and then she said a regular blog post. So evergreen, just for those people that don't know, which would be most of our audience, Christy, is a terminology that we use in the professional writing world that identifies a piece of content that you intend to keep on the website forever. So in other words, let's just say that you as a realtor do a market report, which a lot of realtors do. So you have a couple different things that you can do. You can produce a new market report every single month, or you can produce an old one. Or what I like to do is I like to do two. One is a monthly update, and another one is the state of the market for the year. Okay, and you have a number of different things that you want to do, but guess what? You don't actually want to keep putting down a market report that then says 2019, 2018. It's actually healthier in Google's eyes to do a global market update for a geo-specific area and then update that once a year, every year. And that's what would be called an evergreen piece of content. You have every intention of keeping the same piece of content on your website for the life of the website. And as long as the content is high value, that's an extremely strong strategy to utilize in terms of SEO. And then the other type of content, which is what Christy was mentioning, like interest pieces, lifestyle pieces, things like that, they could be timed, or reviews on restaurants can be timed, like this new restaurant opened up on West 7th Street, which falls directly in the real estate area I service, that kind of thing. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say earlier, Jonathan.
All right, there we go. So I really get it's I'm struggling for the right words. Your example about the lady and writing toddlers, for a large section of real estate agents that I see, I totally agree with you there, what you said, but it's a slightly difficult way of positioning yourself that a lot of real estate agents struggle with. Am I right about that, or am I not
Absolutely.
right?
And I think a lot of it comes from that fear that you're going to miss out on somebody. That if you're not talking to the broadest possible swath of the market, there's going to be some great $1 million listing that you're going to not get. And in reality, I think the people who are big generalists struggle a lot more than the people who are really focused on a niche, who are really focused on a segment of the market. And so, to me, to get your stuff read and to have effective distribution, which is the other piece of it that I think is so important, that really requires a very focused sense of who your audience is and who you're writing for. So again, if you're writing for everybody, you're not going to have that. So the more you can drill down and really understand who you're best equipped to speak to, the better you're going to do. Plus, the people you get from that are going to be people you're going to enjoy working with, and they're going to enjoy working with you. And that's so key. We've all had clients who we've either had to fire as a client, or they were just never happy with us, and it was just never a good fit. And I think if you're bringing people in through content, that really should be something that's sort of a first stage in connecting you to those people. And so when you're connected to them, you're just going to have a better working relationship.
So
my bad, go ahead.
You use that word distribution. I think I understand what you mean by that. Can you go in a little bit more detail about that?
Yeah, and this is what, I wrote an article recently, this is the biggest mistake that you're making with your content. And I think that that's really true. People have this beautiful content and they don't do anything to promote it or distribute it. So, you can distribute in lots of different ways. You can certainly, send it out through social media. You can certainly send it out in an email blast. You can do sort of a video version of it or an infographic version of it that links back. Um, and then if you're thinking a little bigger, you can, look for media channels where you can start producing content, or you can start, sharing content that you have done on your blog. You can have another version of it for a media channel. That was really how I started with Inman. I had a blog post that got a lot of attention, and I just thought it would be a useful thing for people. And I sort of blind pitched it to an editor at Inman, and she's turned into a really good friend, and we do a lot of work together. But it started out purely as I was seeing response to something from my blog that I shared there.
What was this something?
Helped my business tremendously. It was the one thing you need to know to write better property descriptions. And it was basically, don't bury the lead. Let your first line of your property description be the wow factor, because so many people start out with sort of, this is a 2-bedroom, 2-bath townhome. And everybody knows that, right? That's what the listing is for. That's what people searched on Zillow. So that is not helpful. So, start out with, the view, or the entrance, or the privacy, or the fenced yard, or whatever it is that's going to make that pop for people who are looking for, some little feature.
Right.
And so it was, just a very simple concept, but it got a lot of play.
Oh, most of the greatest marketing concepts are simple. They're hard to execute.
Right.
You've heard me use this analogy before. It's very similar to Michael Jordan saying, everybody's like, what do you practice first? Your jump shot? And this is back when he was really famous. And he said, no, I wake up every day and I practice my dribble. And the same thing goes for, it's easy for you and I to sit here and go, write an amazing headline. But I've sat at my desk and struggled with just the header of a blog post, sometimes for hours, depending on what the blog post is. And you run through all the normal variations, top 50 this, top 10 that, and you're like, shit, I'm so tired of top whatevers. And then you go back to the drawing board. So I'm gonna expound a thought that I have for the property descriptions. If I had to say one thing, try to figure out what your USP is. Every property, everything that you do, pick your favorite feature and then work that into the title. It'll help, because you did it. You just did it right now. When you gave the example, you did a favorite feature, and that's a unique selling proposition. So my house here has a jacuzzi. It has a lot of other great things, a nice yard, and this, that, the other thing. But my favorite element of the house is this saltwater jacuzzi thing that we've got going. Right. So I would use that as part of my USP, and maybe say it, an island in Van Nuys, something like that, like eye-catching. And then people go, well, why is it an island? Well, the house has a lot of water features. Yeah. So that's my 10 cents there.
Totally. I live in Florida, and I write for a lot of people down here. And so everything is about how close are you to a lake, a canal, the intercoastal, whatever. And so that's the first line almost automatically, if there's any kind of water feature anywhere. So yeah, absolutely. That's the wow factor.
Right, we're going to go for our break. I've really enjoyed the conversation so far with Christy. We'll be back in a few moments, and we'll be discussing what she sees as some of the most important things she's covered in Inman in 2018, and how she sees things going in 2019. We'll be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. We've had a great discussion with Christy Murdock. So, Christy, what were some of the key articles that you've written yourself, or you've read around some of the key subjects you thought emerged in 2018?
One of the things that I really saw that was interesting for me personally, but was also interesting for the people I was interviewing, was, there's so much now with climate change and the impact that that's having on the real estate market, and these destructive storms and flooding and things like that. We saw so much of that last year. The big earthquake up in Alaska as well was another big sort of disastrous thing that happened. And so I've talked a lot this year with people who are in disaster recovery and the insurance industry, and especially insurance for these big commercial developments and things, and risk management. And everybody is talking about really starting, which is shocking to me, that's not further down the road, but people are really only just now starting to take that into account with the way that they build, the way that they insure. And I think for the individual agent, understanding the risks associated with your local area, that's going to be really a big part of your due diligence going forward. And I don't think it's on many people's radar. So that was the big thing that I took away from last year in terms of some of the big sort of macro trends that I think are going to start moving down into individual markets.
Funny enough, I totally agree with you. I was listening to a radio program, it was on public radio, where they were saying that people are starting now to realise that their moving decisions have to take this into account, because the ability of some areas to get insurance or affordable insurance,
Exactly.
And this also covers Northern California, Southern California, and Nevada when it comes to fire risk as well, doesn't it, Christy?
Yeah, that was a big story that I did, actually, was in the aftermath of that. And it's incredible that we really haven't taken into consideration. When you think about the average homeowner having a 30-year mortgage, what the market looks like today and what it's going to look like in terms of the impact of that over the next 30 years. I mean, it's a huge consideration.
Any other themes, topics, stories that come to mind into?
Wait. Before we
go on.
Jump
Sorry.
into that, John, you should take us to break.
I have.
You did?
Yeah,
you
I did.
The break?
Yes, I did.
Wow, where was I?
I don't know. I don't know where you work. I've found the conversation very fascinating.
Okay, wow, that's embarrassing.
Right.
Not unusual, but still embarrassing. Okay, my bad. Please continue, Christy.
No problem.
Actually, I do have something a little bit more specific. So, Christy, I want to steer us back to the part where we're talking about what you write, but some of the things that I'm kind of curious about, like I'm on your blog right now. That's actually what I've been doing, is I've been looking at your blog while we've all been talking.
Oh, that's a good thing. You've been so engrossed in Christy's blog that you did right. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, that's actually not untrue. I would normally go, shucks, and shunt it off, but that's the only thing I've been looking at.
I'm only teasing. It's one of my only joys in my life. Please, Robert.
So I'm noticing that you seem to do about 4 images per blog post, maybe 5. Is there a formula that you use for adding content elements to your blog post? Do you have a format that you follow?
Yeah, I recently read, maybe 2 or 3 months ago, I used to just do sort of the big header image and maybe one other image later. And I recently read that people can only process maybe a couple hundred words before they need a break. and I always had thought about that in terms of formatting, and doing different headers and different sections, or, switching from just text to bullet points or whatever. But I started using images after each section. And I don't know how much of a difference it makes in readability, but there are studies that indicate that does help, and it gives people a little pause so that they don't feel like they're just reading a wall of text.
Whoa, hey.
Did that answer it?
Yeah, no, it did. Sorry, everything paused for me. I think that my system got slightly overwhelmed because I actually hit play on one of your Facebook I'm sorry, on one of your YouTube videos, and then a friend of mine messaged me at the same. Never mind, guys. Doesn't matter. My system got overwhelmed and everything froze.
Okay.
So I'm going to point something out, partially
Okay.
to keep you on top of your media game. I'm super excited to see that you got into YouTube, and I personally am actually, John and I both constantly drill home YouTube.
Yeah.
John's contribution to YouTube content, he has two businesses, he does two of these shows, and he basically produces these and turns these into YouTube video.
Uh-huh.
I do this, and I do YouTube video on top of that for my other, I love YouTube. I love video marketing. It is one of my favorite formats. I've had great success using it as an enhancement to my content. I personally believe that a lot of the most unique elements about my content come from the video, just because I'm a stream of conscience communicator as opposed to a
Right.
writer. Writing for me is very tough, even though I've done very well with it. It doesn't come naturally. I'm not a natural writer.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I am a natural communicator in this format. I'm not, so, which I know a lot of people wouldn't be, and that's the first thing that you say in your one YouTube video. But anyway, world people, go check out Christy's YouTube video and drop her a comment on it so that she
It
can.
is brand new. It is brand new. I literally uploaded my first video last Friday because I am a natural writer. I have a master's in English. I taught English for years at one of the best schools in the country. So that's my background. And as a middle-aged woman, especially, and I hear this from my female clients all the time, we really struggle with how we look and being young or being whatever. And so it was something I always put off. And I was talking to a PR friend of mine last week, and she said, okay, there's just no more excuses. You got to do it. So I said, what am I afraid of? And so what I was afraid of was looking my worst.
Mhm.
So my first video, which I did Friday, and it is no makeup, no hairdo. I hadn't even had my roots done. So I mean, it was rough. And so that was my idea. If I could put that out there, then I never had to be afraid of anything else again. So that'll be my weekly little, quick video every week. It's called Totally Driven. That's the sort of the concept. And I film it in my car because it's the only quiet place with no kids and no dogs. And so that's what I'm doing. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. So that is a new venture for me.
No, it's a pleasure, and I gotta say, as a person, as a human being, I deeply admire the courage and the tenacity and everything else. I am the video content that I personally look at. I don't look at the really well produced stuff. Like, you can see my place; it's a mess. I believe that the value that we have is, if we have a valuable message,
Yeah.
people will tune in and they will listen to your message. I've been saying that for a long time. I do the same thing that you do, in the sense that I prove it in this, like, I'm never going to be a guy that does fancy video. Not really. I don't think I will be.
Yeah.
I just like really heavy focused, like message focused
I agree.
content. And if your message is merely, look, I can do this, you should be doing this too. I
Right.
love that. I
Yeah.
love that. I love
Thank
that.
you. I love, it's all about authenticity. And, I'm of a different generation, but I identify more with a younger generation that, they're tired of being sold to. And, a lot of the people that I feel like I communicate to are, younger realtors who are really trying to build a business and build a brand, and they need content. And so, yeah, if I can put my 49-year-old face on there with no makeup, a 25-year-old just starting out can definitely be doing that.
No doubt about it. I couldn't
Yeah,
agree with you more. Anybody could really be doing it. I made my
absolutely.
89-year-old grandmother do a video with me. Like, no, I'm not kidding. I mean, the
That's
power
awesome.
of the
Yeah,
world that we live in, the technology, the ability to pass messaging along. It's a new format for storytelling, and storytelling is as old as humanity itself.
that's
And
right.
so I'm deeply engaged in authentic storytelling, and I love the fact that you took
Yeah,
the gainer. And anyway, I think our audience should tune in, because I think it's a great lesson in it. Anybody can do it and should be
thank
doing it, because it also allows you to engage in a different way with the content
you.
producers.
Yes.
Because when you're doing
Yeah.
blogs, like,
Yeah.
if people follow you, like get to know you, Christy, and then and my big belief is that's a
Right.
big part of SEO and marketing in general. And you don't, I like
Yeah.
your story about your friend, but what it doesn't show us, what it doesn't tell us is how do people engage with her personally as she's telling these stories? Like, is she capable of making fun of herself? Like, did her kid throw his food into her face this morning? And is she getting on a video going like this, well, so, it's like, because if you see that, you're like,
we're curated now. Everything is so curated, and people, and I think about this a lot in terms of Instagram as well. We used to take photos so that we would have memories, and they were for us and they were personal, and it didn't matter that they were perfect. And now everything is outward and everything is produced and curated for the world to see, and it makes it really difficult to get in touch with that really authentic moment or that really authentic look. And I think video is the place that we can do that, if we're not too precious about it.
I think we're going to wrap up the podcast part of the show, folks. Hopefully Christy's going to stay on for some bonus content, which you'll be able to see on the Mel Wright YouTube channel and on the Mel Wright website with a full transcript and other links to some of the topics we've discussed in the podcast. And it's definitely to Christy's blog and a new YouTube video. Christy, what is the best way to learn more about you, your thoughts, and what you're up to?
Absolutely. Just Writing Real Estate is my website, writingrealestate.com, and there's a blog there, and subscribe, and you'll get the blog every couple of weeks. And then, of course, on Inman, you can go to my author page, and it's constantly updated. Tomorrow, there is an article coming out about what the Big Lebowski can teach you about blogging. So I think it's going to be a really fun one. People are going to like it. So.
Oh, I love that. That sounds fantastic. Yeah. Robert, how can people find out more about you, your thoughts, and what you're up to?
Do a rain dance, pray to the gods. No, I'm just kidding. Go to inbound.rem.com.
He's fristy. I don't know.
Feel good this first 3 weeks.
He's been ill, folks. He got the virus that I got earlier on.
No. Yeah, it was so not fun. I barely made it through our last show. I'm so sorry about that. I was not in a good place. Anyway, you can find me at inboundrem.com, which we constantly say, YouTube, LinkedIn. I mean, all the places really. I suggest you just follow the Mel Wright Show, though, for the most part. And for those of you that are looking for some deeper knowledge or in the market for real estate website, or want to talk about, or like look at a different perspective about SEO for real estate specifically, then you can check out my website. Other than that, just follow the show, download the show on. I'm getting really excited about our numbers, guys. Help us out. Share the show with your friends who are in real estate. I'd appreciate that.
Yeah. And if you want to find out more about Mel Wright, go to mel-wright.com. It's the all-in-one real estate agent marketing platform. If you're new or you're intermediate agent and you're looking to get your online marketing, improve it, Mel Wright is the platform for you. And if you want a free demo from me, there's a link in the top right hand corner. You click that and you can choose a day and time, and I will show you all the features of Mel Wright. It's been a blast, Christy. Like I say, in the bonus content, we'll be talking about some of the more major subjects in 2018 and what she sees in 2019. We'll see you next week, folks. Bye. Right, Christy. So any other topics in 2018 that took your eye and you thought that was under the radar a little bit?
Really, I just am continuing to be amazed at how disconnected the real estate industry is from content. I just took on a new client, and it's a huge builder, and I won't give the name, but they are just starting a blog. And everybody I talk to who's an influencer in the space and who is especially big with social media and Instagram in particular, talks about it. Every other industry thinks of content as a given. And real estate, it's still just, beginning to, get into people's consciousness. And I think a lot of people don't even really understand the language of content yet. So it's pretty amazing. So really a lot of what I do is still kind of educating people on what content is, and really getting down to some of those very basic ideas about it.
We touched it in the podcast about the show. Do you think an agent can be really effective unless they get into video, especially with social media and YouTube?
I think it's getting much harder. I think there are people who've been in it long enough and have enough referral, enough of a referral network that they can. But for people who are new, who are trying to make an impact in the space, it's really, really difficult. They've got to get their name out there, get their face out there, and they've got to connect in ways that are not traditional. And yet, when you get your first year in real estate handbook that's selling millions of copies, there is like the stuff about social media is like in an afterword. It's not even on anybody's radar. There's such a generational gap between the younger agents coming in and the older agents who are just so resistant to any kind of content or any kind of even having a really decent functioning website. It's kind of strange. It's kind of incredible.
It's really, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a bit difficult for me and Robert because it sounds like we're blowing our own trumpet. But I think I try and keep reasonably balanced, and I find it really odd. I think we all get stuck in our ways, and also it is a very pressurized industry, isn't it? And if you're doing reasonably well with the systems you're doing and you're just about coping, there really isn't much bandwidth or much pressure to change your ways, really, is there?
It's true. And I think people have this idea that it's all going to come back. Like you see people who are still doing their newspaper ads or whatever that they were doing 10 or 20 years ago. And they're like, well, it doesn't get as much response, but I guess it's better than nothing. And it's like, no, I mean, like there's just so much other stuff you could be doing, and you're spending a huge amount compared to what it would cost to have a decent content plan. It's really amazing.
Now, what seemed to be an ongoing debate story in Inman and in general in 2018 was the direct buyers, like what Zillow was planning, that whole area. What do you feel about it? Not in you think it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but how much consciousness and how much debate you sensed in the industry around that particular subject?
I think it's easy for us to get caught in sort of a feedback loop where we're so concerned with that, and the buyers and sellers are really not. They're not in on all those industry shenanigans. So to me, the thing that's going to work is whatever ends up being best for the agents, because ultimately the agents have the connections and they have the name recognition. Really, when you look at the industry as a whole, the big companies don't even have very good name recognition, and they certainly don't really have they really don't. Like they don't have.
I'm so sorry.
When you look statistically, they don't have even positive or negative value attached to their name, and it's the individual agent that people hear about. And so the things that I think end up working for the individual agents, the agents will promote and will work.
I think you've made such a fantastic point there, really, haven't you? Thanks for being, because the facts do prove it, doesn't it? It's really that, the brand recognitions with the agent and the relationships with the agent, isn't it?
Yeah, and then the agents are paying so much money to these brokerages. And for what? I mean, I'm sort of researching that right now for a project that I'm working on. Really, there's this idea that there's some trickle down effect from these big names, and the statistics just don't back
No,
up.
I've been maybe looking at the same stuff as you, and there is none at all, is there?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, what did I say? That the number one brokerage name in terms of recognition only had like a 32% like brand recognition, and that didn't even speak to whether it was positive or negative. It was literally just, oh, we've heard of that. And that 32% was the top one. It was amazing to me.
Now, how much do you apply that to regional brokerages? Because in Northern Nevada, we have 3 to 4 very established regional brokers. Do you think that what you've just said about the national brokerages applies to regional as well?
I think some of the regional ones do better. I know in Atlanta, there's Harry Norman. I'm from Atlanta originally, and I always think about Harry Norman, and it feels very much of that place. And so I think they have a role to play for sure. But, what I see is the people who have these independent companies, whether it's sort of at the state level or the regional level or even just local market level, and they are doing something that feels very organic and very much focused on that particular area. And I think that's different. And that's different from, I just think it's really hard to create a brand message that's compelling nationwide anymore.
Yeah.
There's just such a difference between different areas of the country. And so I think maybe the regional or state level or even market level people are a little more focused on what's playing well there. So I think that they have a role to play. And some of those, smaller brokerage companies are associated with, a sort of iconic figure in that area, in real estate. And so that there's some benefit to that. But, as the population kind of ages, I don't know how much of that's going to still be there.
Yeah. Got a question, Robert?
I do. It's not so much a question is just I want to chime in for our audience. So Christy, you don't know this, but John is somewhat of a general technologist, and I'm a real estate SEO guy specifically. And as the years have gone on, my voice and my blog have gotten more and more traction, and along with what I'm known for, which is I take the advice that you're giving to everybody. I've picked a niche. I try to only be good at my niche. I talk a lot about my niche. My niche in this case is real estate marketing with an emphasis on what you need to do for lead generation. But everything that you're talking about is like checking off a list that John and I talk about a lot, which is being an expert in your area, being a hyper-local expert. The fact that Google actually rewards people like individuals more than they do big companies, and your average agent could easily compete with bigger brand names if they established a voice in their local market. And that's all the things that I hear you saying. And John and I are laughing because the absence of any significant content-driven voice inside the entire residential real estate marketing space is, mind-blowing.
Mind-boggling.
Mind-blowing. There's a handful of small marketing companies that have created really good content, and they're the main drivers of like Easy Agent Pro, Tyler Zay, and another company called Placer. They have these big content machines now that do some good content for real estate agents. But guess what? You would think that a broker training and hiring and recruiting agents would say, holy shit, that's a good strategy. Let's go ahead and give away some of our knowledge online so that we can become the acknowledged expert, and all the agents that are looking to learn this digital stuff can come work for us. The closest thing is Keller Williams, and they do a terrible job of online. So, and I love Gary Keller. If you're listening to the show, I love you, man. Okay. This isn't personal, but let me tell you, I can't believe that you and all your, you haven't hired an SEO expert. Your content isn't going viral. You're not talking about all the things that you can be doing and then giving that information away online, creating yourself a position for yourself. And the regionals, by the way, Christy, I couldn't agree with you more. They have an easier route than Keller Williams does by a mile if they started to do that. Do either one of you know there's two big brands online right now, and they're shocking because because you really wouldn't guess. Element in New York is one of the best online brands, and they're not great.
Content.
They're not great. But
I love their Instagram though.
They do a better job
compared to what everybody else is doing. Yeah.
Right. And even all the really like exciting brand names like Compass, that everybody's talking about. Guess what? Not great at content.
Yeah.
Like you're like, I'm sitting here going, head, desk. You just got, what is it, $1 billion in capitalization, and you can't pay a guy $150,000 a year to come do your content, or gal? I mean, no, I'm not saying like somebody.
Yeah, just to kind of wrap up, it is interesting about Kelly Williams, because I still feel I was discussing that with Robert last week, is that his Red Book, I still think the Red Book is relevant.
100%. I've read it a million times.
Yeah, I've reread it about 3 months ago, and it's a bit. I got it on audio book actually, and it's parts of it are really cheesy. But the core message, some of the core messages in the Red Book are still relevant in 2019. Would you agree, Christy?
100%. I actually, when I very first got my real estate license, I went with Keller Williams in Northern Virginia, and absolutely, they call it the hymn book. And you go to meetings and you bring the hymn book, and it still resonates in terms of building a business and building a brand, and that's the core that for me as a young agent was completely revolutionary. The idea that you're not going in there to sell, you're going in there to be your own brand. And that's the power that content gives you. And it's the differentiator for people who do it well. And unfortunately, there just aren't enough people doing it well, And so, my goal certainly is to bring that power that I think that gives to Inman readers, to readers of my blog, because I think it's really the most powerful thing you can do to create yourself as a business entity, and to really build, and it sounds so cheesy, but to build really the business you had in mind when you started in real estate.
That's great.
That's the goal.
Right, we're going to wrap it up. I've really enjoyed our discussion, Christy. Hopefully you will come back later on in the year and join us again. I think we've just scratched some interesting subjects.
Yeah.
So we're going to end it now, folks. And like I say, next week we'll be back with another guest, and hopefully providing value for you, your family, and for your business. We'll see you next week, folks. Bye.
Bye.